Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us this morning in this event, Data3, Cohesity, and St. Vincent's Health Australia, looking at a new era in data management. So first, a bit of an introduction for those that I haven't met. My name's Paul Aitken. I'm the sales manager for Data3 in Victoria, looking after the solution sales team. For those people that I've met, nice to see you again. For those that are new, I hope you find the webinar this morning informative and interesting as we look at some of the new technologies from our partners at Cohesity. Just introducing the panel for you. Adam Gabriel will be taking us through a presentation deck this morning, focusing on the technology and a bit of the business challenges, etc., that you're facing in this customer market and challenging world that we're in at the moment. And then we've got a panel. So thank you to Simon Weeks, firstly, from St. Vincent's Health. Thanks for joining us this morning. Simon's an existing customer on Cohesity, so we're going to be able to get a customer view this morning as well. And he's one of our panelists, along with Peter Mafadia from Cohesity, and also Paran Anendran, who is the St. Vincent's Health account exec at Data3 and also team leader for Data3 in Victoria. So a very quick kickoff on Data3 for those that don't know us. So Adam, if we can go to the next slide, that would be fantastic. Many customers on the call probably do know who Data3 is, but for those who don't, just a very, very quick history. Obviously, we've been around for a long time, 40 plus years. We're an Australian organisation, head office out of Brisbane, listed on the ASX now and have been that way since 1997. So last year turning over about 1.6 billion, so quite a large organisation now. And we focus across a range of different segments. Healthcare, obviously we'll be talking about that a little bit today with Simon and his experience, but very strong in government, education, and across commercial and enterprise in Australia. I'll talk about our offices separately, but basically out of that 1.6 billion, big focus in the last few years on building the cloud segment, which has been something that for all of us has been new and interesting in the last sort of half a decade or so, and we're now up to $581 million in public cloud. And that's a challenge for all of us trying to manage this on and off premise environments that we've now got to deal with these days. Strong in professional services and also doing cloud computing, etc. Next slide, please, Adam. Location-wise, fully national. Tasmania, actually 2 offices in the north and south of the state. So pretty much from a Data3 perspective, if you're a client who has offices or branches scattered across the country, your local account executive will be able to support you with on-site resources, and all of these sites have got sales, administration, engineering, solution architects and delivery in all of those locations as Data3 permanent staff. So we can truly help our clients from a national perspective. And not to be forgotten, lovely top corner there in Fiji, always a fight to see who gets to look after Fiji in the better conditions and sunny weather over there than we're in Melbourne at the moment. But we also have a Fiji office now since the last couple of years and do a lot of work in that area of the world as well. I should mention also that all of these locations on the eastern seaboard, Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, also have our warehouse facilities and integration centres where we do a lot of pre-build work for clients, and in the data centre space, customers can actually use that and hire out physical space in case you don't have that capability on premise. And if you want to come and do pre-work, data configuration, pre-racking, etc., please feel free to utilize those locations and get your teams on site to do so. And finally, just wrapping up the last little Data3 overview. The next slide, please, Adam. Just a quick overview of the core focus areas that we look at. So probably no strange areas here that you'd expect to be working with Data3 on, but network connectivity, data and analytics, fairly new, but a very growing practice for us. Cybersecurity is always number 1 on the list for customers when they're talking to us on our annual surveys. Collaboration, end user computing and modern workplace. And I suppose today's topic really focuses in that cloud and data center space and what we're doing around helping to manage that area and looking at the technology in that space and how we're backing it up, and also looking at data management in that space as well. So very quick overview. It's about Cohesity today. not about data 3. So I will move on to Adam. And Adam, if you can take us through the presentation, that would be fantastic.
No problems. Thanks, Paul. So hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Adam Gabriel. I'm a senior systems engineer with Cohesity, and I'm based out of Sydney. To get us started, I just want to take us through a bit of an introduction to Cohesity to be sure everyone understands, who we are and what we do, and then we'll jump into some Q&A with our panel, including one of our customers, as Paul mentioned. So to dive right in, why Cohesity, right? What is the problem that we want to solve for our customers? And this really is a lot more or greater than just improving data protection. At Cohesity, we're really aiming to solve this problem of mass data fragmentation. So if we take a look at a typical organization, we can see that all organizations have data. That data is growing, and it's growing exponentially. The data is spread across a number of environments like remote offices, data centers, and public clouds. And each of these environments are comprised of silos of infrastructure that store applications and their data. And of course, this data is critical to the organization, so we need to back it up. We replicate it between sites from edge to data center to cloud. And what we end up doing is really creating fragmented copies of this data that's now spread across these multiple sites and infrastructure silos. And the other challenge we have around this is that data is now dark and trapped within those silos. So what I mean by that is it's not really easily discoverable or usable for other purposes. Once you've backed up your data, it's now kind of locked in that backup format on tape or in the cloud. And we can't easily search or reuse it for other purposes. On top of all of that, we have the complexity of different applications and solutions that are deployed in these various locations to protect workloads either on-prem or in the cloud. And particularly as we start adopting SaaS applications or cloud workloads, we often deploy additional sets of infrastructure or solutions to support that. So what we have in order to address that challenge is our Cohesity Helios platform. So under the covers, Cohesity Helios is essentially a distributed web scale file system that sits on a number of nodes as a cluster. Now, those nodes can be physical servers in an on-prem deployment. They can be virtual to support running at those edge locations, or we can run our software on instances in the cloud in any one of the three key public cloud players. The platform has a number of capabilities built into it, like global deduplication, encryption, compression, and the ability to replicate data and also integrate with the public cloud. Now, the biggest use case for Cohesity is data protection. We incorporate our data protection software right into Helios. So now you have a single scalable platform that includes all the data protection components, right? We are the backup software. We include the servers to run that software, as well as the target storage for those backups to be written to. And if you compare us to, say, what we refer to as a legacy data protection solution, that's what they provide. That's kind of where their delineation ends. Is they provide backup, but that's just a single use case, right? And because of the flexibility of the Cohesity platform, we can actually provide multiple use cases. Now, the next use case for Cohesity is the ability to provision NAS shares directly from the cluster. We are a distributed storage platform under the covers here, so we can provide an export of that storage or provision an NFS mount, an SMB share, or an S3 target directly off that storage cluster that we provide. Now, if you can look at these two initial use cases, this is really how we're ingesting data onto the platform by either backing it up through data protection or hosting it through a NAS share. As we do that, all of that data is indexed so that it's easily searchable for recovery operations, but also to leverage for cloning and other purposes right off the platform as well. So if we wanted to clone a copy of a virtual machine, a database, or a NAS share for test and dev, reporting, or analytics type use cases, we can easily do that and leverage the Cohesity platform to support that. So the idea here is that we can start unlocking the value of that backup data that we're already storing and drive some more value for the customers. The platform also includes native integration with the public cloud, as I mentioned, including those three core plays in AWS, GCP, and Azure. And we'll talk later about how that what some of those capabilities are. But they include archiving to the cloud, cloning to the cloud, and failing over to the cloud as well. So we can take virtual machine backups and push those into the cloud to convert into a cloud instance on demand or as required for DR or migration purposes. So what we've really done here is consolidate a number of traditional copies of data and multiple silos of infrastructure like data protection, target storage, file services, cloud gateways, and all the like into a single scalable platform. Right, we are consolidating all of these components and what would have otherwise been a number of duplicated copies of data into this single platform. Now, all of this is managed by a single UI, regardless of how much data and what workloads you're running across these all the various locations. And we include the ability to integrate with automation tools or orchestrate everything through APIs. Now, on top of all of this, we can expand our capability even further by installing additional apps and services to run directly on the Cohesity Helios platform. Some examples here are antivirus applications and security applications or vulnerability scanning, and then also e-discovery applications such as our own Insights app. Sorry, I've clicked one too many times there. Such as our Insights app, which allows us to actually index the contents of data that's stored on our platform and perform context-based searches for GDPR type use cases or anything else that might be relevant for a given organization. The idea here is we have a copy of all the data on the platform, so why not install and run some additional apps on the same platform, bring the applications closer to the data, and help drive even more value from that otherwise underutilized backup data. Now, supporting all of this is our Cohesity Data Protect software, which really is what drives radically simple backup and recovery operations for us. We are a hyperconverged based platform, so backup and recovery operations are distributed across all the nodes in the cluster, and we can provide a much faster and more capable backup than a lot of the legacy solutions out there today. As I mentioned before, everything can be orchestrated and automated through our API or through integrations with other applications such as ServiceNow or Ansible or whatever else you might have in your pipeline to automate. And then on top of all of this, we have the capability to perform mass and instant restorations if there is an issue. And another key thing that's worth pointing out there is our ability to protect our backup data against things like ransomware attacks, with security being a really big concern for organizations today, particularly in the realm of ransomware and phishing attacks. When we write backups to our platform, they are written to internally accessible views. They are not that backup data is not available outside of Cohesity's platform. So that data is essentially immune to a ransomware attack. On top of that, we also provide some analytics against the rate of ingest of data into the Cohesity platform, so we can identify any potential anomalies when it comes to your data outside of backup being hit by a ransomware attack. So our platform will see that as we're taking backups, that there's been a significant amount of change or a lot of change within the data itself that might indicate an attack, and we can notify the IT team appropriately so they can take action and then quickly recover, leveraging the tools that Cohesity provide. We have a very simple consumption model based on subscription, based on per terabyte licensing. So really easy to consume. We only care about how much data you're storing on our platform after compression and deduplication. We don't care how many workloads you want to protect. If you want to protect Microsoft 365, virtual machines in VMware, instances in the cloud, any one of those workloads, databases, you can protect all of those under that same per terabyte licensing model. We're not concerned about the number of virtual machines, the number of mailboxes, or any of those other metrics you might be used to with other providers. So what makes us different than others out there? Well, there are a lot of advantages on day one. We have a really simple to operate platform driven by our HTML5 UI. Our inbuilt deduplication and compression provides significant efficiency for the backup data that we're storing. We can recover really quickly. We provide that peace of mind when it comes to protection against cyber incidents like ransomware. And on top of all of that, everything that we protect or ingest into our platform is instantly searchable for recovery and other operations. On top of that, as we look to expand the environment, we can do that really easily because of the simple scale out capabilities. We can introduce additional workloads as we need to. As we move to the cloud, we can or adopt SaaS applications. We can start protecting those workloads as well. All of our deduplication, that space efficiency that we talk to, is cluster wide, right? So it's across all workloads that we're looking to dedupe data and drive that efficiency. And of course, we support multiple clouds, right? If you want to run in Azure, but you want to run your backups in AWS, well, we can support that. You want to take backups of Azure and write those backups off to storage in AWS, well, we can support that too, and in just about any flavor that might be suitable to you. The important thing is we provide the flexibility that you need to make those decisions. So now we just wanted to jump into a bit of a Q&A to give everyone some insights from the perspective of those kind of on the front line. So today from one of our customers, we have Simon Weeks, a senior systems engineer at St Vincent's Health Australia. Then we have Pete Mafadia, one of our own systems engineers directly involved with the scoping and implementation of the St Vincent's Health solution, or Cohesity solution. And then we have Para Ganendran, an account executive at Data3, looking after St Vincent's Health. So thanks to each of you for joining us today. So I just want to get into some questions. And to get us started, Simon, I just wanted to start, if you could tell us a little bit about St Vincent's Health and what led to you looking at a modern data protection solution.
Hi, thanks, Adam. St Vincent's is one of the largest health organisations in Australia. We're covering the East Coast with hospitals in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, and we also have some remote sites in Queensland. Prior to Cohesity, we were running several legacy backup solutions like NetBackup, Commvault and HP Data Protector. We were running on legacy hardware as well, which were at the end of their life cycle. And we were looking for a modern enterprise solution that could unify the data protection function across all our locations.
Okay, great, excellent. Yeah, it sounds like there was a bit of complexity in there, but was there a particular compelling event or a specific challenge that you had or that you had to address with the introduction of a new solution? Is there something you really wanted to solve in particular?
Data protection and retention in general had outpaced our legacy solutions at SVHA, and we were struggling with a bit of capacity and things like that. Things like our monthly tape copy, we were still using tapes at the time, was taking up to 3 weeks, which was impacting operations. The backup to disk environment we had was at the end of its life cycle. Performance was struggling sometimes, failures starting to become a bit more frequent. Things like daily maintenance were very time consuming. Recoveries tended to be slow, especially if they were required off tape, and were not as reliable sometimes as we needed. The legacy solutions, so they were past their life cycle. So we also had experts on each of the 3 separate solutions, which wasn't ideal if somebody was on leave. So we needed a solution that could easily scale without needing any complex re-architecting or lengthy outage windows. And the team needed a modern, intuitive interface that would minimise administration time and enable us to better cover each other to deliver the backup and recovery service.
Yeah, right. And that's really interesting because you know, some of the biggest challenges that we set out to solve there are around that complexity of some of those legacy solutions. And it sounds like, you know, you're really struggling with a few of those things that we specifically address. Because I think if we consider those, you know, legacy environments, they are usually made up of a number of different components or different moving parts with separate management silos. And that's exactly what we want to do at Cohesity. We want to consolidate those down into a single platform and provide that ease of use and operational efficiency that's important to organizations today. So have there been any deployment challenges, and how have they been easily overcome with Cohesity?
Well, one of our challenges was that we had these remote sites which didn't have sufficient capacity on site, or a separate backup infrastructure on site. So we needed to back them up effectively to the closest Cohesity cluster in Sydney or Melbourne. So we've got 2 clusters in Melbourne, 2 in Sydney. The 2 in Sydney we use to protect the workloads in the Queensland remote sites. So this made a big difference in that the backups were then off-site, easily recoverable, and the workloads were protected in the remote sites. Cohesity's forever incremental backups as well made this viable, because after a first full backup was completed, which Data 3 helped us set up over a period of time, so we had to do things like checking that the WAN links wouldn't be saturated, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We've effectively, once the full backup is ingested, running an incremental backup forever after that minimises any sort of bandwidth usage, and enables us to perform the backups quickly and efficiently. We also know that, came across Cohesity Snaptree technology, which meant that every backup is effectively a full, and it's important that we didn't have overhead running synthetic full backups or something like that. The restore process for these sites is much more straightforward than we had before as well, as it is much more streamlined. The implementation solution helped to streamline the architecture for protecting the remote locations. So it makes it much easier to maintain, more reliable, and more efficient when we need to restore anything for these remote sites.
Yeah, great. And how would you say, I guess, you've pointed out a few things there anyway, but how would you say Cohesity differs, operationally from the previous platforms that you were working on? And what benefits would you say you've seen so far with Cohesity?
Well, the legacy solutions we had experts in each one, and it wasn't the knowledge transfer wasn't that great across each one. So it wasn't easy to just take over if somebody was away that was the SME in that particular solution. However, with Cohesity now, we've got a modern UI, as you said, running on HTML5, which is very fast, easy, and it's quite intuitive to use as well. So we're all able to come up to speed pretty quickly with Cohesity, and therefore cover each other in busy times, or if people are on a leave or away. So we began using it actually just as about 14 months ago, just as COVID was starting to kick off. So that was sort of proven, as it were, on the running daily sort of operations. Another benefit was the shift away from tape, which that would have obviously been challenging during COVID as we all started remote working. Obviously, quite difficult to change tapes in that situation. So we ceased using a tape, external tape copy, and Cohesity enabled us to leverage a cost-effective cloud storage for long-term retention, thus removing the need for tape. And this allows us to search for VMs and files with Cohesity's Google-like Elasticsearch mechanism. It makes it quick and easy to locate what we need to recover. And when we can initiate the recovery, get on with other tasks, and we don't need to remember which server the data was on, or where it was originally, or which tape it was on at the time, which can always be time consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk to more and more customers who are looking to eliminate that complexity of tape from their environment. And it really does make a big difference, especially when you're working remotely. You don't want to you want to minimize travel of your staff. Having that just incremental backup, just heading off to a cloud bucket, leveraging that low cost storage in the cloud can be really beneficial. And operationally, as you've seen yourself, reduce complexity significantly. Well, thank you, Simon. I'm going to jump over to Pete now. A couple of quick questions for Pete. So, how would you say, Pete, how is the St. Vincent's environment, or how does that compare to that of other Cohesity customers that you've worked with?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Adam. Look, it was one of our largest deployments in ANZ with 4 DCs and what turned out, to be the remote sites being protected also. But fundamentally, when we performed this implementation with the Data 3 team of Scott McKenzie and Michael Cairns, their skills and expertise really ensured a smooth implementation across a very large environment and multiple sites. And of course, it helped to ensure that the migration over and onto Cohesity from those legacy backup solutions was fairly straightforward. And that was, as Simon mentioned, it became important. We didn't know that the world was going to hit COVID, so it was really important that this wasn't a project that was going to potentially go on and distract those resources and require people to still be on site because things weren't working. So yeah, it went really smoothly and really well, and that became incredibly important. And I think the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but in this case, the fact is that Cohesity just went through fairly straightforward and enabled the St. Vincent's team to just focus on the higher priority objectives at that time.
Mm. And I guess you had the Data 3 team supporting that process across the country as well, as you need to deploy to all of those sites.
Yeah, they were fantastic. They were absolutely essential to making sure that not only was it a success, but the migration was extremely fast.
Cool. And so considering, what's available now in terms of Cohesity and what's coming soon, what other, capabilities do you expect will provide, even more value to not just St. Vincent's, but other customers out there?
Yeah, so look, I'm sure you find this yourself, Adam. Cohesity is such a rich solution. It's got so many features, and we're always enhancing them and adding more. So, like, in addition to being a leading data protection solution, it's also the scale-out NAS with support for all flash nodes. I know that St. Vincent's have a significant investment in an existing file share solution. And so we don't have to displace that. We could actually be complementary to that. So in this case, we could potentially look to, stub off data that's cold and free capacity up on that as an example. Look, I enjoy discussing additional opportunities to make use of those capabilities, right, to help clients derive additional value from their Cohesity solution. I suppose, something that's going to be fairly interesting to many of our clients and prospects to come is our cloud-based data management as a service that we're looking to roll out in ANZ in the near future. And that's going to enable them to consume backup, DR, and more as a service, right? And that aligns with a lot of organisations on that cloud journey and, looking to adopt cloud and services where it makes sense. And certainly, Adam, you alluded to in your introduction, our ability to protect M365 workloads, which, that adoption has been accelerated largely from COVID, people working from home and so forth. And sometimes as a result of just trying to stay ahead of that, people have sort of forgotten that like cloud has durability, but the data protection, that cost-effective archiving, being able to quickly search and perform granular recovery, that remains the responsibility, of the client, just as it was when it was on-prem. And I think, Cohesity doesn't license per mailbox or per user, and that really helps them to tackle that more cost-effectively. And then finally, that increased intelligence and automation of our management that's available on the Helios platform. I think that's going to help all of our customers to continue to work smarter and not harder. And certainly it builds on that experience Simon spoke of, where they were able to radically reduce the amount of complexity, consolidate on a one modern UI that enables them to intuitively ramp up to managing their environment and covering each other and becoming a much more effective and efficient IT service when it comes to data protection. So I think we'll see that extend into as we enhance our Helios automation of that management platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with the result of COVID, seeing an uptick in the protection of those cloud workloads, and in particular Microsoft 365. We've also seen an uptick in threats like ransomware and all of that as well. So all the organizations we talk to are very concerned about ensuring all of these workloads are protected both across on-prem and the cloud. So thanks, Pete. I think, Para, we might jump over to you. I think it'd be great for everyone to understand, what sort of led you as Data3 to consider or to move forward with presenting that joint solution of Cohesity and Cisco over other alternatives on the market.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So we've had I suppose, a long partnership with St. Vincent's, and over that course, the team have been pretty open about some of the opportunities, challenges, and strategies that were coming up. And when I say challenges, things like having too many different vendors and technologies to try and manage. So we were looking for a team where we could consolidate the variations of technologies that they had within the environment. So Cohesity's strong alliance to the likes of Cisco and HP at that particular point, that was the predominant infrastructure vendors in the St. Vincent's database, data centers. So we essentially, that was one of the initial thought processes that we started considering the platform. The other thing was it was a changing environment. So there was consolidation, there was potential to move workloads into the cloud. So there's a number of different things that were coming in there. So the flexibility that Cohesity offered around being able to essentially lift and shift your backup into the cloud without having any further commercial complexities, because as you know, with some of the legacy backup platforms, it's agent-based and there's a lot of complexity with having to repurpose or repurchase licenses if you move it from one place to another location. Cohesity's flexibility on that side I thought would be quite appealing to St. Vincent's. So if they were to move something from on-prem to the cloud, they don't have to do anything else. It's just a lift and shift type of environment. The other thing is when St. Vincent's, like most hospitals, have very tight budgets. So if they were to invest in infrastructure, and if it's purpose built for a particular type of workload, if they were to move, what would happen to that infrastructure? So some of the things that you mentioned earlier around file storage and analytics and test and dev and so on, there were opportunities with St. Vincent's. If they needed to move workloads more aggressively into the cloud, they could repurpose that platform as well. So there was a lot of interesting topics that we covered with the Cohesity team prior, and then started discussions with St. Vincent's, and it sort of aligned really well, basically.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and that's a really good point on the licensing front. As we adopt workloads on premise, most organizations have a desire to move workloads to the cloud in the future. So any licensing that you purchase for Cohesity today can be repurposed into the cloud. It's essentially portable away from on-prem into the cloud. So that's a good point.
Absolutely. And probably one other point was we knew when we initially went into this journey, because of the different systems, there was a lot of silos of data, but there were duplicated data, and the efficiency that Cohesity offers meant that when you bring it all together, you're going to reduce that footprint significantly, right? So it means you're going to have less infrastructure, a lot easier to manage, and from a commercial investment perspective, it was going to make more sense as well. So there was a number of things there that sort of appealed.
Absolutely. Thanks. And so I guess finally, how would you say Data3 are prepared? Can you give us a rundown on how Data3 are prepared to deliver these Cohesity solutions?
Yeah. So there's a fairly stringent training process that the team, from an architecture and delivery perspective, have to go through, which, as the team alluded to earlier, Scott and one of the guys, Michael Keynes, went through initially. They then had to shadow some of the Cohesity engineers on a couple of deployments to basically get some on-the-job training before they could basically then go out and do some deployments themselves. And yeah, and we work very closely with Pete Mafia and the broader Cohesity team, so very, very well supported as well.
And probably to add to that, Adam, from a certification perspective, Data3 doesn't just resell, I suppose, as a terminology. We like to make sure we invest in the partners that we work with so we can add the value to customers. So from a certification perspective, if a customer does engage with us, like St. Vincent's did, our delivery resources, our sales resources, our solution architects are all certified. So we have a Cohesity sales professional accreditation, partner pre-sales certification, and an installation professional certification that you have to have in order to be able to deliver all those components. So yeah, from that perspective, obviously, we invest heavily in that partnering, and soon to have another resource on site at Data3 as well to help customers in the sales process and understanding the technology through an investment between Cohesity and Data3. We're looking to bring someone on shortly to fulfill that. So we'll have another resource dedicated to assisting in this space. So yeah, and a final question. So Para mentioned things like consolidation of data and dedupe. So we have had a question from the audience. So thank you, Richard, for sending that in. So this is probably open to all panel members, and I think it might have a bit of a client take on it as well. So what are the typical dedupe ratios that you saw, and have the restoration times met the expectations? So I think that's probably aimed at Simon potentially, and I think we could also have Pete or Adam chime in on that area as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, we see anything up to even 30 times dedupe, so it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And on the restoration side, how are the recovery operations?
Sorry, yeah. Restoration times. So something like restoring a whole VM, so a 50 gig VM, used to take us about an hour or so with some of the old systems, but now you're talking sort of, it takes more time to pick which version you want than how long it actually takes to restore. So literally with the instant recovery, it's about, say, 20-30 seconds total.
Wow.
Yeah,
till it's up and running. So that's, and we had one of the examples we tested at the start was we had a 10 terabyte VM, and using instant recovery, it was online literally within a minute and fully functional. And then all it does later on is vMotion across to the correct data store, and it was, it blew us away pretty much.
The important thing there is when we are performing a restoration, in the case of VMware, in this instance, we mount a data store of Cohesity storage back to the VMware environment, and we add the virtual machine to inventory, and we turn it on. That VM is now recovered. In the background, we kick off the storage vMotion and move that back to production storage target. And this is something we can support at scale because of the distributed platform that we are. And that's what supports our instant mass restore capability. And on the deduplication and compression front, that is a variable number that you will get. It depends on your data a lot, but yeah, we see typical numbers of up to that 30 to 1 as Simon is seeing from a storage reduction number. But in true just deduplication, you'll see anywhere from 3 to 5 to 1 on that just straight dedupe. But data reduction as a whole, including compression and storage reduction as a whole, will really get up to those numbers as Simon mentioned. Was that the only question there at this stage?
Anyone I've got so far, so unless that is correct, hopefully we answered your question, Richard, so thank you for that. If anyone else that's on the call has got a question they'd like to raise with the panel, they can just type it into the Q&A chat there. So we'll hold off for a second on that. But yeah, I think that those sort of rates are fantastic to hear from a customer perspective. As you know, sometimes we read these things on brochures and and sit in meetings and talk about dedupe ratios, and it's nice to actually hear a customer implement a technology and get the benefits, hopefully probably even more than what you thought when we were going through the original conversations, but getting that benefit. So here we go. This conversation has triggered some activity on the Q&A panel. So another question quickly coming in here, just about cyber attacks. Hearing about how they're targeting backups in production data. How was Cohesity able to help mitigate some of that threat, if you like, through cyber attacks in that production data?
Yeah, it's sure. Pete, did you want to jump on that one first?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump on that one. Look, one of the things that that COVID enabled was for me to work with Simon and all of my clients to harden their platforms against the sorts of threats, that we're seeing a lot of headlines coming out of the US because it was considerably more out of control there than over here. And so, these cyber hackers were taking advantage of the fact that there was such mayhem occurring to effectively attack a lot of medical health institutions. And so the features that Adam talked about initially, right, the immutability of the file system, the fact that when we do that instant mass restore, we never present the original backup information. It's always a zero copyrightable clone. There's encryption as part of the platform, and there's also the ability to data lock the actual backups. So what that means is they're worm protected. So even if if Simon got credentials scraped, or somebody who could get administrative access into the Cohesity had that capability, they can't delete the backups, and that's really important to help protect those backups as your last line of recovery in the event of a cyber attack. So there's a number of capabilities, and one of the other ones that's really helpful, of course, is that if there is, because there's so many different angles and methods that these cyber hackers are using, if they were to actually get in and start to encrypt in the primary environment, we can detect those anomalies as part of our Helios artificial intelligence, right? So there's a lot of telemetry that we get about our backups, not the actual data, but the actual backups. So we can very quickly detect whether or not, hey, that's considerably more on ingest than we're normally seeing, or we can see a variance of the data reducibility that we normally expect. And so we've had a couple of those situations, and Simon's investigated and been able to very quickly understand, the apps people are doing something over here, or there's been an upgrade. And it's important to have that visibility, because before, people really didn't, and potential was that they would start backing up. So the platform's got a lot of capabilities to be very resilient against cyber attack. And what I'll do, if I can, I'll post a link to everybody there in the chat. And there's a blog there with a report that was done by the evaluator group who assessed our capabilities. And I would encourage anybody who's interested, prospects, customers, to take a look at that report. And that really covers it in great detail.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Pete. Any further questions there, Paul? Or I might thank all of our panelists today. Thanks, Simon, Pete, and Para. Thanks for being on the panel and answering those questions. But I might just hand back over to Paul now.
Yeah, no problems.
Wrap us up.
Thank you. Thanks.
And do let us know if any more questions pop up as well.
Yeah, no, we've covered them so far. Just a quick one too, while we've got the audience, just remembering that Cohesity is at our annual Juice IT event this year. It's Juice IT Digital. A little bit of a change, obviously, with the world that it is, but it's going to be a fantastic event. You can find the registration for that event on our standard data3.com website under events. Fantastic keynote speakers this year. and the ability for you to obviously set your own agenda and have breakout sessions. Even though it's a digital platform, you can actually then, you know, grab the guys from Data3, from Cohesity, and have some breakout whiteboard planning sessions through the technology that we'll be using. So certainly encourage any customers on the call, if they haven't registered for Juice already, to do so, and to encourage you and look forward to seeing you. But there's 2 streams specifically for Cohesity at the Juice event around data management and that M365 backup that the guys were talking about. So, and I think there's just the last slide to wrap up. So yeah, thank you for everyone who's been on the call today. Thank you very much to the panel, and a big thanks to yourself, Simon. Always great to have the customer view, because that's what we all work for, to making sure we're delivering on our customer requirements and giving you value. We hope you found the session informative, and we look forward to catching up with you all soon. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.